a shootout at the border, new tariffs on 14 countries, and a chart-topping band that turns out to be all AI. In today's trivia question, which famous detective bureau was hired by the U.S. government to track down outlaw Jesse James? Tell you at the end of the show. It's Tuesday, July 8th, and this is the Flyover Podcast. Welcome to the Flyover Podcast, taking you above the noise for an unbiased, high-altitude view of today's headlines with daily coverage that's honest and refreshing. Let's cruise the news and land the facts. Good morning and welcome to the Flyover Podcast. I'm your weekday host, Ayla Brown. And if you're just finding the Flyover for the first time, welcome. We are so glad that you're here. To those of you who watch or listen every day, we appreciate you. Let's get into it and take off with the biggest headlines of the day. First up, a developing story out of Texas. A man from Michigan was shot and killed after opening fire outside of a U.S. Border Patrol station in McAllen early Monday morning. Authorities say 27-year-old Ryan Lewis Mosqueda exchanged gunfire with agents and local police, injuring a Border Patrol employee and two officers, one of whom was hit in the knee. All three are stable in the hospital, and the FBI has taken over the investigation. As of now, the motive remains unclear. Now to a major international trade announcement from the White House. President Trump says the U.S. will impose steep new tariffs up to 40% on imports from 14 countries, including Japan, South Korea, and Malaysia. The tariffs are set to begin August 1st. President Trump posted letters to each country on Truth Social, warning that any retaliation could bring even higher rates. He also noted that the rates could be adjusted depending on future diplomatic relationships. Markets dipped slightly on the news, with all major indexes closing down less than 1%. And finally, music fans, listen to this. A viral new band with over 1 million monthly Spotify listeners just revealed it's completely AI-generated. The group is called The Velvet Sundown, and since debuting in early June, they've released 2 full albums and climbed the charts with a mix of 70s-style rock and indie pop. But something kind of felt off. There were no tour dates, no social media presence, and oddly perfect press photos. Well, now we know why. In early July, the band updated its Spotify bio to confirm. It says this: The Velvet Sundown is a synthetic music project guided by human creative discretion, but composed, voiced, and visualized with the help of artificial intelligence. Their third album, by the way, drops on July 14th, but the people behind the project are still anonymous. If you're wondering, what does AI-generated music sound like? Here is one of the songs.
Raise your hand, don't look away, sing out loud, make them pay. March for peace, not for pride, let that flag turn with the tide.
So what do you think of it? The full song can be found in the show notes below. And by the way, stick around for today's poll question because I'm going to ask you a question about AI-generated music. Let's take a look at 4 key political developments making headlines today. First, Elon Musk's new political venture is starting to take shape. Musk's America Party, officially launched this summer, is laying out a platform centered on free speech, gun rights, and what it calls tech-forward economy. The party is embracing Bitcoin as part of its economic vision, supporting AI-powered military upgrades, and pushing for a sweeping rollback on federal regulations. While it's unclear how many candidates of the party will run, or if Musk himself has plans to run, it's already gaining attention for its mix of libertarian, nationalist, and Silicon Valley values. Meanwhile, ICE is preparing for a major surge in immigration enforcement. Thanks to a new funding under the Big Beautiful Bill, ICE is planning to increase arrests to 7,000 per day, which is more than double its current average. President Trump's border czar, Tom Homan, says the goal is to compensate for what he describes as record-high migrant releases during the Biden administration. The plan includes expanded detention space and new tech tools to speed up processing and removals. And a newly revealed memo sheds light on a turning point in the 2024 election. A memo from President Biden's former advisors, released this week, shows they had urged him to debate Donald Trump early in the 2024 race, hoping it would demonstrate leadership and reset the campaign narrative. But the plan backfired. Biden's poor performance in that debate triggered a wave of Democratic panic, eventually leading to his withdrawal from the race just weeks later. Lastly, President Trump says there's more to that Paramount lawsuit settlement that meets the eye. President Trump previously announced a $16 million settlement from Paramount Global tied to a defamation claim over a 60 Minutes interview with Kamala Harris. But now he says that deal also included an additional $16 to $20 million in pro-Trump advertising as part of Paramount's merger negotiations with Skydance Media. That detail hasn't been independently confirmed, but President Trump's team is touting it as a win both legally and politically. Today's episode is brought to you by Native Path Collagen, something I use every single day. Native Path is made with just one ingredient, pure hydrolyzed collagen peptides. No fillers, no artificial sweeteners, no additives, just type 1 and type 3 collagen, which make up about 90% of the collagen in your body. It's third-party tested for heavy metals, so you know it's safe, and it's completely flavorless. I mix it right into my coffee, and honestly, you'd never know it's there. Over 40 million jars sold, 80,000 five-star reviews, and a 365-day no-risk guarantee. So if you're curious, go to getnativepathcollagen.com/flyover or click on the link in the show notes below. All right, here are some bonus stories just for listeners of the Flyover Podcast. First, Vice President J.D. Vance is stepping into the spotlight. As President Trump's $4.5 trillion tax and immigration bill made its way through Congress, Vance emerged as a key player, casting tie-breaking votes in the Senate and personally lobbying holdout Republicans in both chambers. It's a big moment for the VP, who once made a name for himself as a critic of foreign intervention, but now backs President Trump's actions in the Middle East, including strikes in Iran and Yemen. Behind the scenes, aides say Vance has voiced concerns privately, but publicly, he's all in, fueling speculation that Trump may be grooming him as a successor heading into 2028. Meanwhile, on Capitol Hill, the press corps is facing a quiet dilemma: how to cover aging lawmakers. Washington, D.C. Delegate Eleanor Holmes Norton, who's 86, has recently told reporters twice that she plans to run for re-election. But in both cases, her staff walked the comments back, raising questions about her cognitive state and broader concerns about how reporters navigate moments like these. Journalists say they often struggle between reporting what's said on the record and respecting the private health realities of older politicians. It's another sign of Washington's era where age and mental acuity are becoming harder to ignore, especially with several congressional leaders now well into their 80s and even 90s. And finally, a heads up for anyone using CBD products. A new FDA study found that even low daily doses of CBD, that's the cannabis-derived compound found in everything from gummies to lotions, can pose a risk to liver health. In the clinical trial, 5% of participants showed elevated liver enzymes, and 7 people withdrew entirely due to signs of liver damage. Women appeared slightly more vulnerable in the study, though most of the liver markers returned to normal after stopping the use. The results are raising alarms because CBD is still widely available over the counter despite very limited FDA oversight or labeling rules. That's your podcast extra roundup. As always, I'm looking forward to giving you more exclusive content in tomorrow's podcast. Here's a few quick updates on finance news. First up, Trump Media has officially launched its new streaming platform. Truth Plus, the new service from Trump Media and Technology Group, rolled out globally on Monday. It features programming from Newsmax and other right-leaning creators, and it's available in both app and browser form. The launch marks the company's latest expansion beyond Truth Social as it seeks to build a full conservative media ecosystem ahead of the 2026 midterms. Read more about that in today's show notes. Next, over at Detroit Metro Airport, a 4th of July fire safety mishap grounded 3 planes. Spirit Airlines had to pull 3 aircraft from service after a fire suppression system accidentally discharged foam inside a maintenance hangar. There was no actual fire and no one was hurt, but the incident caused some holiday travel disruptions as the airline inspected the aircraft and cleared the hangar for operations. And ByteDance is racing the clock to keep TikTok alive in the United States. The company behind TikTok is now developing a separate U.S.-specific version of the app as it faces a looming September 17th divestment deadline. Under a 2024 law signed by President Trump, TikTok must sell its American operations to non-Chinese investors or face a nationwide ban. President Trump says a deal is, quote, pretty much done, but the final hurdle will be Chinese regulatory approval, which is still uncertain. Here's how the market did yesterday. It was a rough start to the week on Wall Street as all 3 major indexes closed in the red Monday. The Nasdaq fell 0.92%, the S&P 500 dropped 0.79%, and the Dow slid nearly 1%. Bitcoin also dipped just over 1%, landing at 108,111. On the flip side, gold ticked up 0.42% to $3,346 an ounce. One bright spot, Enovix Corp jumped to more than 14% after announcing a special dividend of stock warrants tied to the launch of its new AI-1 silicon anode smartphone battery. Let's take a quick spin through the top sports stories and one big show of support from the NFL. First, some much-needed help is heading to Texas. The Dallas Cowboys, Houston Texans, and the NFL have pledged $1.5 million to aid flood recovery efforts in Kerr County, where catastrophic flash flooding claimed dozens of lives last week. The funds will go to trusted local organizations working on rescue, recovery, and rebuilding. And both teams say they're committed to providing continued support as the region recovers. In baseball, the 2025 MLB All-Star rosters are locked in. The LA Dodgers lead the league this year with 5 players selected, showing just how deep their roster runs this season. The full All-Star game lineup is now available online, and fans can explore a full team-by-team breakdown, plus who's been chosen for the Home Run Derby and other events leading up to the Midsummer Classic. And in NASCAR, it was a big weekend for Shane Van Gisbergen. The New Zealand driver took first place in Sunday's Chicago street race, marking another major win in his U.S. racing career. Meanwhile, overall points leader William Byron had a rough outing, finishing 40th, which trims his lead in the driver's standings and tightens the race heading into the final stretch of the season. Let's head into science and tech, where we're talking strawberries, spinning planets, and a full moon lighting up your week. First up, Dyson, yes, the vacuum company, is making headlines for farming. In Lincolnshire, UK, Dyson just unveiled a high-tech vertical farm that looks like something out of a sci-fi movie. The setup features 1,000-pound rotating rigs, UV-powered cleaning robots, and 16 robotic arms that manage to harvest 200,000 strawberries in just 1 month. It's part of the company's investment in agricultural innovation aimed at growing more food with less space and fewer human hands. Meanwhile, Earth is picking up the pace, literally. This Wednesday, July 10th, will be one of the shortest days of 2025, with the planet completing its full rotation about 1.6 milliseconds faster than the typical 24 hours. Scientists aren't exactly sure what's behind the speed up, but it could be due to shifts in Earth's molten core, glacial rebound, or even seismic activity. By the way, if you're curious, it's not something that you'll feel, but it's another example of how our planet's rhythms aren't as fixed as we might think. And finally, eyes to the sky on Thursday night for July's full moon. It's called the Thunder Moon, named after summer storms, and it will rise in the southeast and set in the southwest. Expected to appear especially bright and low on the horizon. So if you're heading out for an evening walk or you want to just get a great photo opportunity, definitely just look up on Thursday. Coming up, are you ready to travel? Are you looking for a new place to go? Well, a list of 20 must-see U.S. destinations is coming your way. Plus today's poll question, yesterday's poll results, and trivia. Let's jump into some stories that we just couldn't leave out of the podcast. First, in Utah, a massive explosion rocked a strip mall in Harriman Saturday night after a 3-car crash ruptured a gas line, setting off a fiery chain reaction. 3 people were injured, and the blast engulfed a Domino's Pizza, blowing out the roof and damaging nearby businesses. The explosion was caught on video and has been circulating online. Emergency crews say it could have been much worse if it weren't for the quick evacuation. Fire officials are still investigating what caused the crash. Next, things got steamy in Brooklyn on purpose. More than 1,200 sauna lovers gathered last month for the first ever U.S. competitive show Offgus. Yes, that's a thing. Held at the Bathhouse in Brooklyn. It featured trained sauna masters performing theatrical towel whipping routines, blasting essential oils and swirling heat and choreographed moves. Think Olympic figure skating meets hot yoga with eucalyptus. Okay. The trend comes from Germany and is gaining popularity as a blend of wellness and performance art. And a new travel list highlights 20 must-see U.S. destinations that showcase the country's beauty and history. Topping the list is the Grand Canyon, 277 miles long, a mile deep, and drawing millions each year for epic views and hikes. Denali in Alaska follows, standing as North America's tallest peak at over 20,000 feet, with wildlife like moose and grizzlies. Other iconic stops, Central Park in New York City, the jazz-filled French Quarter in New Orleans, the waterfalls in Yosemite, Yellowstone's geysers, and the Red Rock Canyons of Zion. Route 66 and Mount Rushmore also make the cut for their nostalgic and patriotic appeal. By the way, you can find the entire list of the top 20 travel destinations in the show notes below. And finally, an unbelievable crime out of Australia. A woman has been convicted of murdering 3 of her estranged husband's relatives and attempting to kill a 4th by serving them beef Wellington laced with deadly death cap mushrooms. The incident, which happened last year, made international headlines due to its eerie, almost Agatha Christie-style setup. Prosecutors say she cooked the dish knowing the mushrooms were toxic. She now faces a life sentence, and the case has sparked fresh warnings about the dangers of foraging wild fungi. Or fungi. Or, yeah, which one is it? You tell me. Here's yesterday's poll question and the results. Have you been to Hawaii? 54% of you said you have. You said yes. 36%, like me, said no. 6% of you are planning a trip. And 4%, how dare you? You voted not my vibe. Here's the poll question for today. We talked about AI-generated music right at the top of the show. By the way, you can listen to that song that I was telling you about in the show notes below. So here's the question. Would you listen to music generated by AI? Here are the options. Yes, sounds futuristic. Maybe, if it's good. No way, I prefer human-made. Or lastly, I already do. All right, so this one really tugs at my heartstrings, and here's why. As a singer and a musician, I have poured my soul into every note that I've written and performed. Like, all I've ever wanted is for people to find my music, connect with it, and maybe even be moved by it. But I also know that my music might not be for everyone. And that raises a question. What if someone finds joy or healing in a song made by AI? What if that song helps them through a breakup or leads them to find their soulmate? At the end of the day, music is music. So honestly, I'm still thinking this one through, but I really want to know where you stand. Tap the link in the show notes to vote, and I'll share the results in tomorrow's show. Can't wait to see how you vote. You've made it to the trivia question. Which famous detective bureau was hired by the U.S. government to track down outlaw Jesse James? The answer? It was the Pinkertons, bought in by the railroads in the 1870s. But their pursuit turned disastrous after a raid on James's family farm killed his half-brother and injured his mother, leading to national backlash. See, now you know. That's it for the Flyover Podcast. Thank you, everybody, for listening, for sharing, for watching, and rating the show. I will see you tomorrow with more headlines. Stay well. Until then, thanks for flying with us.